the prototype's real plan for Poppy. What if we've completely misunderstood the prototype? For years, we've looked at Experiment 1006 as the ultimate villain of Poppy Playtime, a monster that controls the experiments, a creature that collects their bodies, and the one character who seems to be standing in the way of everyone trying to escape Playtime Company. But there's one problem with that idea. If the prototype really wanted Poppy dead, why didn't he just kill her? Think about it. Poppy has been involved in some of the biggest events inside Playtime Co. She's discovered secrets, she's interfered with the prototype's plans, and she clearly doesn't agree with everything he wants. So why keep her alive? Maybe because killing Poppy was never the plan. Maybe the prototype wants something much more important from her. And if this theory is right, his real goal could completely change the way we see him. Before Experiment 1006 became the prototype, there was Oliver, a child connected to Elliot Ludwig and the early experiments of Playtime Company. And eventually, something went terribly wrong. Oliver was transformed into Experiment 1006. The person he once was replaced by something else, something stronger, something that could survive, something that could think, the prototype. But here's the interesting part. What if the prototype never forgot what happened to him? What if he remembers being human? What if every experiment he performs, every body part he collects, and every creature he controls is connected to one simple goal, becoming something that can never be controlled again? Because think about what Playtime Company did to him. They took a living being and turned him into an experiment. They decided what he would become. They decided what his body would be, and they decided what his life was worth. So after escaping, what would the prototype want more than anything? Control. And this could explain why the prototype is so obsessed with the other experiments. He doesn't simply destroy them, he uses them, he studies them, he controls them, he brings them together. At first, this looks like nothing more than an attempt to build an army. But maybe there's another reason. Maybe the prototype sees himself in them. They're experiments. They're abandoned. They're damaged by Playtime Co. And just like him, they were created without being given a choice. So maybe the prototype believes he's saving them, not by giving them freedom, but by giving them protection. And there's a huge difference between those two things. This brings us to the better place. We've heard the idea of a place where the experiments can finally escape their creators, a place where humans can't control them anymore. And honestly, that sounds like exactly what the experiments would want. But there's one question we need to ask. What does the prototype actually mean when he says, better place? Because his idea of a perfect world might be completely different from Poppy's. Imagine a world where every experiment is safe. No humans, no laboratories, no scientists, no Playtime Co. Sounds perfect, right? But what if there's one rule? The prototype is in charge, and nobody is allowed to challenge him. Suddenly, the better place doesn't sound so perfect anymore. It sounds like another form of control, just with a different person holding the power. And that's where Poppy becomes extremely important, because Poppy and the prototype might actually want the same thing: freedom. They both know what Playtime Company did to the experiments. They both know the company can't simply be trusted. And they both want the toys to have a future. So why are they fighting? Because they disagree about what freedom actually means. Poppy believes the experiments should be able to choose their own future. The prototype may believe that someone has to take control before the humans can take control again, and that someone is him. Now think about Poppy herself. She's not just another experiment. She has her own goals, her own decisions, and most importantly, she doesn't blindly follow the prototype. That's exactly what could make her so important. The prototype might not want to destroy her. He might want her on his side. Imagine finally meeting someone who understands everything that happened inside Playtime Company. Someone who understands the experiments. Someone who knows what it's like to exist because of the company's experiments. That person is Poppy. So instead of killing her, the prototype could try to convince her. He could show her everything Playtime Company did. He could show her the experiments he's protecting. He could show her the better place, and then he could give her a choice: join him or continue fighting. And that's where things get really interesting, because what happens if Poppy refuses? Would the prototype accept her decision, or would he decide that he knows what's best for her? Because that's the biggest weakness in his entire philosophy. He wants to protect the experiments, but he may not understand that protection without choice is still control. And Poppy could be the person who finally forces him to understand that. But there's another character we can't ignore: the player. We've spent so much time inside Playtime Company. We've survived experiment after experiment. We've discovered secret after secret. And somehow we keep getting closer to the prototype. But what if that's not an accident? What if the prototype has been watching us? What if he knows exactly what we're doing? And what if he actually wants us to reach him? Because maybe the prototype doesn't see the player as just another threat. Maybe he sees the player as someone who can finally understand the truth. Someone who can see what Playtime Company did. Someone who can decide whether the prototype is actually the villain or just another victim. And this leads to my biggest prediction. I don't think the final conflict will simply be the player versus the prototype. And I don't think it will simply be Poppy versus the prototype. I think the real conflict is going to be about control. The prototype wants to create a world where the experiments can never be controlled by humans again. Poppy wants to create a future where the experiments can choose for themselves. And the player could end up being stuck between both sides. One side wants protection, the other wants freedom. And both believe they're doing the right thing. That's what could make the final conflict so interesting. Because the prototype doesn't necessarily have to be completely wrong. Playtime Company really did hurt these experiments. The company really did treat living beings like products. And the prototype's anger actually makes sense. It's his solution that's dangerous. Maybe that's why the prototype is such a terrifying character. Not because he has no reason for what he's doing, but because he has a reason that might even sound logical until you realize what he's willing to do to achieve it. He may have started with one simple goal: protect the experiments. But somewhere along the way, he may have forgotten the difference between protecting someone and controlling them. And Poppy could be the one person who refuses to let him forget it. So, does the prototype actually want Poppy dead? Maybe that's what Playtime Company wants us to believe. But I don't think that's his real goal. I think he wants Poppy to understand him. He wants her to see the world the way he sees it. A world without Playtime Company. A world without human control. A world where the experiments can finally exist on their own, but Poppy may have a completely different answer. Because freedom isn't about having someone else decide what's best for you. Freedom means having the choice to decide for yourself. And if the prototype can't understand that, Poppy may eventually become his greatest enemy, not because she wants to destroy him, but because she refuses to become him. And maybe that's what Poppy Playtime has been building toward this entire time. Not a simple battle between a hero and a monster, but a battle between two completely different ideas of freedom.